Now this is a story how about my life got twisted upside down. Okay, fine, 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 fine. I will not be singing on the podcast. I know that my voice was not made for singing. I've come into total surrender and acceptance of this. So I'm sorry if I scared you a while ago. But listen, this episode is the story of how I became an ambitious Jesus girl. Now, for many of you, if you have been following me for a while, then you would know my conversion story. You will know that I was Paul's sister. You understand? Like the sinner of sinners of sinner. Like call me Paulette. But you get it, right? And so for if you have not gotten a chance, earlier when I started the Diary for Jesus Girl podcast, I would have shared some of my story. No, that was 3 years ago. Many things have happened, and I feel like I need to retell my story. One, I have had far more growth. I've, I know that some new people are tuning in now, and they're like, "Who is this girl? Why is she calling herself an ambitious Jesus girl?" Like, listen. So I'm going to try to like put my story in a few minutes about who the ambitious Jesus girl is. Now let me put it out there. One, again, I'm Crystal D. I'm the host of this amazing show, the Ambitious Jesus Girl, formerly the Diary for Jesus Girl podcast. Now I go by many names, many titles. I'm a 10 times award winning author. I am an international speaker. I'm a publisher extraordinaire. Yes, I own my own publishing company. I'm a global book and monetization coach. I am the host of my own talk show. Yes, the Daylight Show. I am on TV every Thursday on MTM. Yes, right. I'm the mother of Princess Christelle. Well, right now she's like a 12-year-old, almost a teenager, stressing me out a bit. Wife to some nice future man. So we'll talk about that part one next time, right? But I also love to dub myself the millionaire motivator. So I believe that my purpose is to help to motivate persons to dream bigger than them, to pursue a life, pursue their purpose and to impact lives with their message. So basically that's what I do. As I mentioned, I do like I don't want to say there are two parts of what I do, but in my personal brand, I write books as I'm a 10 times author, so I write books. I'm a speaker. I go around doing corporate trainings, empowerment sessions in schools, and I love to talk about Jesus. Like I love Jesus. When I say I love Jesus, I love Jesus. Bad, 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 bad. I love Jesus. If you're from another country outside of the Caribbean, you probably will realize the accent. So I am from Kingston, Jamaica. Yes. But I do travel a lot, and I'll try to not speak too much patois, Jamaican. I'll try to speak more English because I do know that I have a large international following. But every now and then you'll hear the Jamaican accent and the Jamaicanness kick in. But yes, so you'll always hear me talk about, just being a millionaire motivator because in my other aspect of what I do, which as a global book coach, publisher, I believe that I'm called to help persons to reach millions. So to reach millions with their message. So I'll tell you more about that as we get to know each other or re-know. For those who don't know me, you get to know me, and for those who knew me and have been following me, I love you guys. Thank you for just being here and always listening and cheering me on and sending me emails to say, Crystal, when is the podcast coming back? So you always hear me say millionaire motivator, but in the core of who I am, like David has his thing. David is a man after God's own heart, or Noah had his thing, he's a friend of God. My thing is I'm an ambitious Jesus girl. Yes, I am. I am filled with ambition to impact lives like Jesus and to love Jesus with all my heart. No, of course, I did not start out like this, which gets into the story. So I was born here in Kingston, and I tell persons I was born in a very violent prone, poverty stricken community in Kingston, Jamaica. But one of the things I would always remember, that as young as I can remember, I've always been very ambitious. I I don't know. It could be, my father that used to tell me that my name is Crystal, and he always tells me that I will shine light, that I will bright up the place. And plus, my last name is Day, so it's almost like Crystal Day. Like anywhere you take it, I'm supposed to be this bright, shining light. So I've always had that. So, even going to basic school, primary school, high school, I've always been very driven. I am very focused. When I have a goal, when I have a dream, I am going after it. And from as a young as I can remember, I was the eldest of my siblings, and I always had this drive and ambition to move out of the inner city. And my father would always tell me that education is the way out. So, I would always be studying. I tell people I can't ride a bicycle up until today because, I would always be seen with a book, which again, another time I'll talk about, because books have always been a part of me, which is interesting because like now that I'm an author and and a book coach and a publisher, my parents would say, "Oh, well, I mean, you've always loved book." Like I used to go to the library. I used to love going to the library as a child. I used to buy, like, use my lunch money to buy math book to sit down and just practice math. Listen, I am not a math person anymore, but you get me. Like I've always been very book kind of person. So look at God having the best sense of humor. Anyway, growing up, I always kind of decided that felt like I wanted to do politics. And I wanted to do politics because, again, growing up in the inner city, there are many days I went to bed hungry. There's many days I couldn't go to school because we didn't have lunch money. And, I've always thought that politics would be the way out. So, I always wanted to help people. Like I knew with all my heart that whatever I'm doing, it is to help people. So I remember, just going through high school. I graduated as one of the top girl of the school. When I graduated, couldn't go to college full time because my parents didn't have it. So at 16 years old, I got my first job, was working at the bank, and I was going back to school to get, to get into university. And went to university part time. Now let me be honest, while I was very ambitious and doing very well, regarding my personal accomplishments and my personal dreams, the reality is that I did not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I know that God exists. I always knew that God exists. I remember going to the country with my aunt, and she would always, be praying. I would always go to church, and I always remember just bargaining with God. My mom, taught me how to pray from I was very young. She'd always tell us to pray before we go to bed, etc. So I knew, and plus I attended Catholic schools, so you know about prayer, you bargain with God. But I didn't desire to have a relationship with Jesus because one, a lot of the churches that I went to, they were so religious. Like, I mean, I grew up in the inner city. I wear, short shorts. I love nails. I love dressing up, and I don't know. It just feels like when you turn a Christian, it's like you turn a old man. Like God is against you looking nice, and that's kind of how I saw it. Also, I mean, I at a very young age, I was molested, and what you found was that I was very promiscuous. So for in my head, I was like, I don't even know how I would ever stop having sex. So when I found out that as a Christian you can't have sex and all of these things, I'm like, no, that's not even going to work for me. But I always, like, there was something that knew that one day I will become a Christian, but it wasn't anytime soon. So long story short, an ex of mine, which was a friend, he one night, we used to party a lot, and one night he went to visit a girl, and a guy came in. I guess the girl boyfriend came in and shot him. No, I think I was about 19 and he was probably about 22. And I remember this was like the first time that I really realized how, like, you could just be here today and gone tomorrow. So, in that season, I started to visit more churches, and just kind of visiting churches. I also remember, I must show to, there is this church I used to visit all the time, Burian, and I still go there a lot and preach now. And Pastor Farbs, I always talk about Pastor Farbs. He planted the seed. and even though I didn't get saved at their church, that man prayed for me. That man always evangelized to me. That, like, I love Pastor Forbes, right? But eventually I found a church. And I realized, I was just going through a very hard season. I had two boyfriends, both of them left me. I eventually, went to church one Sunday, and the pastor was sharing a message, and he's like, hey, when everybody forsake you, God will always love you no matter what you do. And I remember just walking to the altar and, deciding in that moment I want to give my life to the Lord. But I wasn't ready to baptize because, again, it was actually Christmas season, right? Actually, during this time, when it was near the Christmas season, I'm like, yo, I have party. Like, I have so many parties to attend. This is not working out. And I remember the pastor asking me, if I die, where do I go? Where I think I go. But I know I believe in hell. I believe in heaven. And, he just wanted to know God more. And I got baptized. Long story short, again, you know, um, I didn't live a true Christian life. After about 3 months, I started partying again. I started having sex again, and I got pregnant in church about a year and a half after. And it was, in my pregnancy that I really found out what the true love of God looked like, because it was a really challenging time. If you haven't gotten a chance, I have a podcast called something about promiscuity. I'll leave it in the show notes that you can listen and share more about some of that. But when my daughter Christelle was was exactly what I needed to change my life. Well, she's not a what, but that situation of getting pregnant in church really helped to to build my faith and to want it and desire more of God. And when she was about 2 or so, I was like, I was partying hard, but I was also, engaged to get married, and I was doing pretty cool. And I was like, I just felt like I needed more. And I just felt like I needed more. And it was weird that I needed more, because by now I'd accomplished all the things that I actually said that I would. I moved out of the inner city. I owned a house. I owned a car. I started to travel. I had this beautiful daughter. I was engaged to get married. And you just, like, I didn't have any reason to feel so empty, because I had accomplished it all. And this is why, ambition without Jesus doesn't make sense, because you can pursue all the things, and no, I wasn't rich, but I was very comfortable, especially because of how I grew up. You understand? Like, I would have made it. I was in a very good job by now, but it wasn't enough. And after I started to pray about, just God showing me my purpose. And one of the things came up was that, you know, I didn't feel like the person I was marrying was supposed to be the person I married at that time. No, he's definitely not a bad person. Really cool guy. I know that he loves me, but I didn't think in that moment that he was the one that God wanted me to marry. And when that engagement call off, I didn't realize how much it would affected me. It affected me when it called off, and it just pushed me more to pursue God. And that was probably about 2013, I believe. Yes, it was 2013. I remember still struggling. So I was still having sex, but one of the things, when I was having sex, I was crying all the time. I was just always so sad, because I wanted to live for God, but I wasn't courageous enough to read. Like, I was a Christian, but I was a lukewarm Christian. Like, I didn't want to give up the world, but I also wanted to please God. And it was just such a very hard season. I remember, listening a lot of Joel Osteen at that time, because for me, I know people say Joel, all different kind of things. I listen, that's a Joel and God business. But the Lord really used Joel to help to build my faith. And I just remember sitting at the party, it's December 31st, leading into the new year for January 1st, 2014. I was like, Lord, if you don't come tonight, Jesus always I come New Year's Eve, right? If you don't come, I will truly surrender my heart to you. And, since then, I have not turned back. So that's my conversion story. And, I in 2014, I just started to pursue God. I started to pursue the things of God. And one of the things that started to happen in my pursuit of God, it was that I started to lose friends. I started to yeah, it felt like everything in my life started to just go awry. That's the best way to put it. But while everything was going awry, everything was also falling into place. I went on this 3 month fast from social media because once I listen, you see, when I like rededicated my life to the Lord, and it wasn't like I didn't go to a church or whatever, it was literally in the party. I was like, Lord, if you get me through, I will serve you, I'll pursue you, I will not do this anymore. And literally, I was doing that in our party. And I kid you not, like January 2nd, I was on social media evangelizing. I tell people, like, the John 4 story of the woman at the well, that was me. Like, I had multiple boyfriends. Like, that was me. Like, she had multiple husbands. And once she encountered Christ, she ran into the town and said, "Come see a man." That's what started to happen. I started to post Jesus, Jesus. Everything became about Jesus. And after my fast ended, I think it was September, October, November, I believe. And after my fast ended, I was invited to a church to come and speak. So I thought that the pastor wanted me to share my testimony, but then he said I was supposed to preach. And I'm like, oh my God, like, preach. No, the church I was attending at the time don't really believe that women are called to preach and be pastors and stuff. So, it was kind of weird that I was being invited to, but I did some prayer and fasting, you see. And, I eventually went and, God, when I say God, that I got this message called Brand New Free. I never forget. I got the message called Brand New Free. And that message, wow, 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 God just showed me, my identity in Him. Like, I'm thinking about it now, and I just feel so emotional going back because I don't get a chance a lot of time to talk about my conversion story. Of course, I mean, I tell my testimony, but this part, like the first time I preached, and the first time I went on fasting, and just how God showed up, and I just had this ambition. Which is what comes into being an ambitious Jesus girl, because as I mentioned, I was always very ambitious, very driven. Like, I'm the kind of person when I was in 9 to 5, like, I see this job and I look at the requirements, and I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to do whatever it is to get that job. Like, I'm very, very, very disciplined when it comes down to my goals and accomplishing my dreams and going after and having faith to do those things. And when I came into the kingdom, I had the same passion, same zeal, the same ambitious attitude to do things for God. Now, here's the thing though. In doing things for God, I have had seasons where it become more about doing instead of becoming. So this is why I need a balance, right? Because while I'm doing things, I want to ensure that my personal relationship with Christ is I'm becoming more like Him, and we'll talk more about that in the later time. But yeah, so that's, as I said, I've just always been ambitious. And you know again, to kind of try to cut this story short, yeah, my life just changed. I started just evangelizing on social media. I started getting invitation to speak at schools and churches, and eventually I hosted a conference. I remember the first time the Lord told me to host a conference, like a women's conference. I'm like, what is a women's conference? Because remember, I wasn't church. I didn't grow up in church. So it was kind of weird. And I mean, I know about crusade, I know about convention, but back then, 2014, there weren't a lot of women's conference, especially in the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica. Maybe one and two, but it wasn't popular. So, when the Lord gave me this vision, and I tell you, see, when God give you a vision, He will like send provision. So just like that, in my church, a very good friend of mine, shout out to Desiree. I shared the vision with Desiree. Oh, before I got a conference, thank you, Holy Spirit. Before I got the conference, I was doing before I got the conference, I did I think it was 1 year, I believe. Yeah, 1 year. Yeah, 2014, I had hosted a workshop in the Caribbean, a workshop in my community for girls. Yes, how did I forget? Yes, I did a workshop called She's Royal. I'll come back and tell you more about that She's Royal thing. But I went on a retreat. Long story short, I went on a retreat. I'm not gonna say long story short anymore. But yeah, I went on a retreat. I told them about the vision of helping persons, inspiring people, and the name She's Royal came up. I hosted this amazing workshop. It was so good, and then the next year, the Lord, which is now the 2015, the Lord said that I'm gonna do a conference. I shared it with my friend Desiree, and just like Desiree is the kind of person that once I tell her the vision, then she just make things happen, and I'm the executor. So she's a visionary, and I'm the executioner. So once she said, Crystal, do this, I would say, I would just, and the conference, that was the first time website, like she did a website for the conference. We had a 2-day conference. It was amazing. People all over the world. Like, we had persons that came down for that event. The Lord told me that 100 people would be at that event. At that time, I did not have this big platform that I have now. But God, and I tell you, God showed up. And then 2016, we had the conference again. And then when I was preparing for the 2016 conference, he told me that he's going to transition me. So that was the last year of the conference. And and I didn't know what that meant. But, I guess 2017 was what he was transitioning me into business now. And on January 20th, 2017, you know, I left my 9 to 5 job and to start pursue kingdom entrepreneurship. No, I'm going to really kind of wrap up the testimony now because I did not expect the podcast to be so long. But, just again, just sharing the story of how, I became ambitious Jesus girl. Again, I think that I was born, this was my identity from even before God placed me in my mother's womb. But I used my ambition for the wrong, well, I wouldn't say for the wrong things, but I wasn't aligned to how God would want me to be ambitious. And, when I think about it, I think about Paul. Like, before Paul got his conversion, he was zealous about, his belief. He was very, as a Jew, he was very, very zealous. He was killing Christians because he's like, no, you should be serving, and when he had his conversion, he still had the zeal, he still had the passion, he still, and God used him, but God used him for the kingdom. And I believe that that's how, for me, it was. It was like I've always been this ambitious girl, but then when I came into the kingdom, God started use my ambition for his glory to impact others. Listen, if I tell, like, my friend is again, my friend, after shout her out. I know she hates when I call her name. I won't call her name again. But one of the things she said to me was, I want you to sit down and write down your accomplishments since you became a Christian. Like, people of God, like, I've worked with over 500 authors. Like, I stopped counting after 500 because I probably reached thousands of authors now. In my publishing imprint, we have published over 200 authors. Like, I host the largest author conference here in the Caribbean, reach millions. For 2 years, I did Kingdom Author Success Conference and Book Fair, and also the host of the founder of the Kingdom in the Author Awards. I've been featured on over 100 platforms. I tell people I speak annually at least 40 times minimum. Sometimes I'm speaking 5, 6 times for the month, right? Even in a pandemic. Like, when I say God has been faithful, this is me just wanting to jump and dance. I wish I could put, this is when I want to be on the video, right? And this is not to boast in terms of my goodness. I'm boasting in the goodness of the God, in of the Lord, right? There's a song in Jamaica, the Jamaican singer Aline, she said, boast in our God, boast in our God. Listen, I can boast in my God. I can boast in my God. And just the impact that he has given me, the influence, the legacy. Like, no, has it been easy? No, 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 no way. All right, so I think the podcast, I get to know me a little bit more. Like, I'm crazy, like, I'm funny. I kind of am funny. Ask my friends. I am. And everything you say, I find a song to sing. But I can't believe I'm doing that on a podcast. But I guess, hey, the Ambitious Jesus Girl podcast is you getting to know me a little bit more. And of course, as I mentioned, I will be having guests. I already have some guests lined up. They will be on for next in January. So when the new year start, that's when my guests. So for the rest of the year, get me. You'll get me. Yeah. But starting January, definitely, we'll incorporate guests. So this is it. Are you an ambitious Jesus girl? And even if that is not, you may not necessarily call yourself an ambitious Jesus girl, but if you wanna have a desire to do more for the kingdom of God, if you have a desire to love like Jesus, if you have a desire for love Jesus, if you have a desire to impact lives like Jesus, if you have a desire to be that woman that has dreams bigger than her, yes, you are an ambitious Jesus girl. If you want to use your gifts to impact lives for the kingdom of God, if you want to ensure that you die empty, as Miles Monroe would say, then you are an ambitious Jesus girl. And again, shout out the ambitious Jesus men that maybe listen to this podcast. Like, I just hit record and I cannot believe that I'm talking for 30 minutes because I talk, like, when I'm recording this, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm recording this podcast. And I wanted to sleep on still I hit record to let you know that I know that this is a season that God is saying that it's such a time as this. Empowered for such a time as this. I'm living my royal reality. I've said goodbye to their insecurity. I'm living my blessed, booked, and boundless life because I've been called to be a Christian life coach. I sell more books and I'm reaching millions because I draw closer to God. No, you probably don't get that, but I just literally named all my books in my speech a while ago. So listen, go and get copies of my books. I will be promoting my books. I will be promoting, my speaking. Book me to speak. Book me on a podcast. Talk to me nice. Also, oh my God, I didn't want to announce it yet, but I'm gonna end to say, I'm putting together a book club. It's a book club slash discipleship group. I'm still praying about it, but it's Ambitious Jesus Girl Book Club. It is going to be like more cry right now, but you will hear more about it as I, kind of seek the Lord more about how to do it. But yeah, with song coming up, I'm not gonna see it, but happy, yeah, clap your hands. Like that's what I want to do right now because yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy that this is falling. Like a month, me I try ask God, Lord, what should I do about the podcast? Tell me to if I have to end it, I'll end it. Tell me. And this is aligning with who I am right now, and I'm looking forward to pouring into you, to encourage you, to introduce my guest to you, all of these things. All right, so I am out again. Some call to action. If you are new to this podcast, please go and follow me on Instagram. Connect with me. Tell me your honest thought. Like, what do you think about the Ambitious Jesus Girl podcast? Tell me. I want you to leave some reviews, please. Thank you. Leave some reviews. I appreciate them. Also, it's almost the end of the year. Purpose Planner is coming out in a week time. So I will be sharing, the link about signing up for my Purpose Planner. As soon as I get the go ahead from God, I'll let you know about the book club. And then also you need to go and get my books. Yes, go and get my books. What are you waiting on to get my books? Yes. So have a great one. I'm looking forward to, yeah, next week. Yeah, next week. I'll let you know. So every Monday, podcast will be out. Every Monday morning, you will get this podcast right to your inbox to start your week in encouragement, in empowerment, in inspiration. Love you, but God love you more.